So we always like to ask people, like Star Wars fans, what was your first experience with Star Wars? Like, what was your first earliest memory of it?
You know, my first memory was really my audition process. I had no clue what Star Wars was. I grew up in New Zealand. My mom raised 6 kids by herself, and there was no cable, so we had 3 TV channels. At 11:45, this little bird would come on the TV and go, "Good night, New Zealand," and literally put the whole country to sleep. And then the TV would shut off. So Star Wars never came by. People also don't realize, now I'm the biggest Star Wars nerd. I grew up in the episodes between episode 6 and 1. There was 16 years of absolutely no stories besides backstories, fan-created projects, and a few little stories we don't talk about.
Eddie Popelli, what's happened to you?
Get into the escape pod.
Hey, Jesus!
Other than that, there was no real Star Wars until episode 1. So when I came into it all, I was very, very young, I guess,
Right.
fresh.
Right.
So when they asked me to do the audition, my agent called me screaming, basically couldn't breathe because she was so excited that she had managed to land me the audition for Star Wars. Well, I'd been doing auditions for months, years, and I was doing well at them. So I'm like, yeah, sure, another audition, just send me over the script and I'll get this one too. So she replies back to me, "Daniel, you don't get it. This is Star Wars. You're not gonna get this movie.
That's encouraging.
But I will forever be able to sell you as the kid that auditioned to be the kid that was in Star Wars."
So do you think it was better that you kind of went in
Oh.
unassuming and just...
You know, it's like when your parents are like, "Oh, he's gonna do good at sports today," but then you show up and you get 50 goals and they're like, "Wow, he's better than I thought." It was kind of that reaction, you know? She's like, "You aren't gonna get this." So when I went into the audition process, my mother and my grandmother got stopped at the door. It was a beautiful hotel, the nicest one in New Zealand. They stopped them at the door and they only said, "The boy only." You know, okay. So I walked in and I had to start selling myself from that moment on because there was no script. I wasn't even allowed to tell anybody for 2 years after filming that movie that I was actually in the movie Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
Imagine being 13. There was a girl that you had a crush on. You figured, man, what's the biggest pickup line then? Hey, I'm about to be in a Star Wars franchise, you know? So there was no script. So when I went in, I had to basically sell Daniel Logan, right? What do you do? What's your hobbies? And then it came to my very first line experience. They asked me if I had any special talents. Of course I've got special talents. Now you're gonna start thinking of special talents that you have, right? So I had just seen episode 1 with Darth Maul. So I figured I'm gonna be the next Darth Maul, you know? There's gonna be a whole bunch of Darth Mauls. Well, in my country, we have a thing called the Taiaha, and it's a stick that looks like a double-handed lightsaber that back in the day we used to fight one-on-one combat and kill each other with in real life in New Zealand.
Right.
So I told her that I knew how to do the Taiaha. I knew she wouldn't have a stick in this beautiful hotel, right?
Well,
And
the
if she
chances,
did, it'd
right,
take a long time to find it. So I'm like, yeah, I know how to do the Taiaha. Very good in it. Matter of fact, I'm one of the best in my school. You know, I'm lying there. So she says, well, why don't you show me what it looks like? Well, do you have a stick? No, but this is Star Wars. Just pretend like you have a stick in your hand. That's what you call calling the bluff, right?
You're right, absolutely.
So I was the very first Star Wars kid ever in the whole of the world before social media and YouTube. I ran around this hotel room like this.
Nailed it.
I was like, I can't wait to be Darth Maul. So that was my very first experience, right? I found out later on that I auditioned out of 5,000 children worldwide.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason, they chose my big forehead to continue the role as Boba Fett. But yeah, I've been asked all the time, what do you think allowed you or made you be the one to get this role? And my honest answer is that I was the kid that prayed the most. And that really is, you know, most kids prayed once or twice a day. I was praying 4 or 5 times a day, you know? But for me, I really don't have a clue. Jeremy Bulloch, who's the original Boba Fett, his theory is, think about having to watch all of those audition tapes, right? You get to 2,437 or something like that, and you're done. You're like, man, I need a drink, I need to go to the toilet. So you just happen to freeze on someone's face. You go, you have your break, you come back, you're like, you know, I'm done. Just call this kid, he would do.
Well, you stood out for sure, too.
I said, hey, that's what I said to Jeremy. I said, I don't care how I got it. I just care that I got it.
Yeah, no kidding.
You got it, man.
And I can harass you for the rest of my life.
When you were on set, was there any was there any specific piece of acting advice or direction that was given to you by George that sticks out in your mind?
George was amazing. You know, most people have heard only nothing, because I never knew about all the criticism and everything else beforehand about actors saying he's, you know, more, fire, higher, whatever. But for me, I never had that experience, right? As an actor now, you've trained yourself so much that it's like if I hire someone to come do electric work on my house, but they're a plumber, right? Like, you really need to know all your tools. You need a general contractor who can do everything. And that's what actors end up becoming. And as an adult, you really don't have an excuse for the director to be sitting there the whole time going, okay, I want you to see this. I need you to pull this emotion. I need this to happen. Like, you expect you're paying someone who's a qualified person to do your job. As a child, you get away with that because you don't have the years of experience. You don't have the years of training by amazing teachers who have credibility to help you boost your acting abilities. So George really was one-on-one with me a lot. If you see a lot of the photos of me and George, I just stare at him and he would just explain to me like, okay, Daniel, there's a droid over here and it's blowing up and there's smoke rising to the sky. Can you see that? And I'm like, he's like, okay, great, okay, ready, you know, and
That's
action,
amazing.
you know, and then I'm already there, you know. When I was doing the asteroid scene, he came up to me and says, so, this was on Friday, he goes, so, when you come back on Monday, are you excited to fly through an asteroid field and be chased by a Jedi? I'm like, so you go home to New Zealand for 2 days, right? The only thing you can think of was like, man, I'm gonna be flying through space chasing people, you know? Like, I don't know who I'm chasing or what the asteroid really looked like, but he just gave you images.
Because a lot of the film, I mean, there was a lot of just green screen, right?
Yeah, all of it was green screen for me because I was blue. The thing between blue and green screen is that if I'm a blue character, I can't use blue because I'll be special effects over as well. So you have to use green. Even if you have the smallest little blue on your outfit, you always work in green screen. So I never got anything else besides this green that looks like these bags right here, right? Every day I go, bring, like, oh, come out a little browner, you know, from a suntan just off the lights and the green. But, you know, people ask me all the time about the helmet scene. This is how amazing George Lucas is. I didn't know that my dad got his head chopped off till I watched the movie the very first time at the premiere.
Oh, wow.
In New
You're
York.
kidding.
And I was the only one who cheered in the movie theater. Yes! They're like, oh! I'm like, yeah! So everyone asked me later on, like, why'd you cheer when your dad got his head chopped off? I said, well, no, because I'm the baddest bounty hunter in the galaxy. I was meant to get my revenge, but I guess Samuel Jackson didn't want to be killed by a punk kid, and
Yeah.
I just happened to be that punk kid.
So you had no idea at the time. That's amazing.
No, well, George, I was just getting off the arena scene, and there was all these little pieces, like the ropes, my little leg pieces, so I was just getting off all those pieces, and he came in personally himself and was like, where's my Boba Fett? I need him for one more take. So he comes in, he grabs the helmet as we walk, I get all in, and he grabs the Django helmet as we're walking out of the costuming room. We walk over with one camera guy. He goes down, he says, can you do it like this? And being a little older now, like, I realized why he went on one knee, you know? Because you can't sit like this forever.
Right.
But I went and I did it, but because I was so flexible, I just kind of did it like I was doing a number 2 poop, you know? But it worked out well. And
It's a fantastic scene in the film, man.
Yeah.
you know, it's awesome because when people ask, like when someone says, oh, he was in Star Wars, then they reply, oh, what were you, an Ewok? And I'm like, well, I would wish I was an Ewok. I'd be anything. I'd be a grain of sand or a tree swinging in the background, like, oh, more to the left. Okay, more, faster? Okay,
Faster,
you
more
know,
intense, yeah.
anything. But then when you can say, no, I played the kid whose dad got his head chopped off in the second film, they're like, oh. I'm like, you know, the kid, you were him? Oh, man, I have to rewatch, like coming through the immigration checkpoint, right? I was so close to secondary, I felt it. You know when you feel the force of someone else, like. So I was coming near the border, and he, you know, you go through, and he says, where you from? I said, I'm from California. He says, why you coming in with why you coming to Canada? Oh, no, are you coming in with any goods? And I said, the only thing I got as good is me, buddy. And I knew that was the down point of secondary inspection. So he says, why are you coming to Canada? I said, oh, I'm coming to a Comic-Con. That was the second most closest to secondary inspection. Don't you have Comic-Cons where you live? I said, yeah, but I travel the world to them. Third almost to strike, right? Like, so that's when I had to break. Well, actually, I played Boba Fett in Star Wars. Oh, what? Where you were too? Have a good night.
Totally shifts, yeah.
Thank you, George Lucas. Thank you, George Lucas.
Saved your life again. So speaking of Jango Fett, Tamura Morrison played your father on screen. How was your relationship on set with him? Like, how was that like working with him?
You know, we still have a very, very close bond. I grew up without a father. So after Star Wars, I gained a father. And he's always been like that with me now. After Star Wars, we met on the film, and he said to me, you're going to be playing my son, I'm going to be playing your dad. You call me dad, and I'll call you son. So I said, okay, dad. And he looked down at me and goes, okay, son. And we've really had the father-son bond ever since. He would call my house after the film, you know, and my sister or my brother would pick up and be like, hello, and he's like, hi, is Daniel there? And they'll be like, well, who's speaking? He'd be like, this is his father. And they're like, oh, click, you know, hang up and become, oh, he wants to call you now that you're famous, you know, like, where's he been all your life? And I'm like, what? And he'd call back, like, oh, no, this is his Star Wars father, Tamura Morrison. And he was so famous in my country, like, oh my God, Daniel, Tamura Morrison, you know? I'm like, oh, yo, that's just my father, don't worry, you know?
That's fantastic. One of my favorite scenes in that film is the scene when it's yourself, your father, and Obi-Wan in the apartment on Camino. I love that scene because the look that you give Obi-Wan, that kind of
Stink eye,
stink eye, that up and down look was pristine. And that kind of leads into this question. Were there any scenes in the film that you can recall that didn't make it into the film, that might have been like cutting room floor stuff, that maybe a film that you wished ended up in the film?
There was a lot. You got to remember there was different angling. So you only got one angle of it. Then we'd move and we'd do another angling. Then there would be another one. There was some where Samuel Jackson wasn't walking through the tunnel on the Geonosis scene, you know. So then he would walk in. I mean, there was so much going on that you can't really remember the whole entire experience. Right. You only really get to remember what was left for you on the film. That scene that he's talking about when they come to my house.
I love that scene.
Do you like your army?
I look forward to seeing them in action.
They'll do their job well. I'll guarantee that.
Thank you for your time, Django.
Always a pleasure to meet a Jedi.
What is it, Dad?
Pack your things. We're leaving.
I grew up with two big brothers, right? Like, you know, brothers kind of get in trouble sometimes. So when George said to me, hey, Daniel, I need you to do a face like someone's suspicious. You know, you don't know why they're there, but they're coming to your house and you're just suspicious of them. And I'm like, oh, so you mean like a police officer coming to my house for one of my brothers? And he's like,
I'll be specific.
no, you know, I'm like, oh. Too honest? He's like, who have I hired? I'm gonna have to do a background check on this kid. How did he slip through the background check? So then Ewan comes up to me and says, Daniel, just do a face like I did a very smelly fart. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. He's like, okay, very good. So I go up, and meanwhile, it's right up on my face. So I look up, and as I look up, I start sniffing the fart. I'm like, so he literally starts spitting in laughter in my face. George calls cut. He starts laughing. Everyone starts laughing. I'm so confused. I thought that's what they wanted, right?
Right.
So George calls me to the monitor and he says, Daniel, just check it out. So he rewinds it, does it back. I go, isn't that what you wanted? He says, yes. Rewinds it again, plays it back slowly, and you see the nostrils just go. As I'm sniffing the fart. So he's like, everything besides the nostrils. So it took me like 7 or 8 takes after that to get it right. But meanwhile, Ewan is so much of a child, he's having fun with it. Every time he'd walk up to it, he's like, like, so I wouldn't be able to stop laughing. I have a Polaroid of me and him like hugging on the set of, out on the lot of the studio. But there was a guy riding by on a bike. So he's put like these fart like little things behind the guy on the bike because he's like, so in the picture's like, boop, boop, boop. I'm like, you are one of a kind. But that's what kind of guy he is. He's amazing, Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, I've seen new sides of him today.
Yeah.
So then after Attack of the Clones, you went on to voice Boba Fett in the Clone Wars. What was the experience like working on that series?
You know, that was an amazing experience. All you kids out there, you gotta learn how to grease, bribe, or just figure a way into a good job, right? So I knew after Star Wars, I was like, that might be it. You never know. So then the Clone Wars came around, I became a very big fan of it. So I would see this director, Dave Filoni, at these conventions. So every time I saw him, I would try and buy his breakfast, his lunch, his dinner. If he was gonna get a soda, I'd rush in there like, I got it, yeah, don't worry. How much is it? Oh, do you take card? No. But I would try to buy everything for him, right? So then I get this call one day, I'm at home and I get a call like, hey, we would like you to come back and reprise your role as Boba. Would you like to do that in the Clone Wars? And I'm like, oh, yes! You know, I'm like God calling me to heaven again, you know? I'm like, oh. So I go to the studio and Dave Filoni's there and I kind of wait till everyone's gone and I pull him aside and I say, hey, man, thank you so much. What for? I said, for giving me this job. I said, I never knew that buying you all those dinners and breakfasts and stuff would actually paid off. He's like, no, I didn't give you a job. He says, we actually didn't know where to go with the Clone Wars storyline. He said, at that point in time, George Lucas walks into the room, opens the door, pokes his head in and says, I want Boba Fett in the Clone Wars. Call Daniel Logan.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Like, I'm coming, Father. I mean, George Lucas is my second God, I tell you, you know? I have 2 prayers. God, please let George Lucas think about me as much as I'm thinking about him. And then I go pray to, you know, George Lucas. I'm like, George, please let God keep blessing me with all your blessings.
On that note, how excited are you for the next season of Clone Wars?
I'm so excited, right? Yeah, the girl. You know, Disney, they canceled it. I think it was getting a little too graphic. Actually, it was getting really graphic. Boba was doing some really, really cool stuff. He started actually becoming a bounty hunter.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, it was just too graphic, I think, for what Disney was used to. We had actually recorded 7 episodes that didn't get aired. You got to see a second of maybe the one Cad Bane, 1 episode. Yeah, you got like that 2 minutes, little bit. Yes, but yeah, and then the Ventress one. So there was so many episodes that was coming up, and Boba was just doing some really cool stuff. I don't cry, but I mean, I started tearing up when I saw some of these episodes, you know, and what I was doing. So we actually recorded them. But yeah, that's all that's left. I don't know. They might come back. You never know.
Love to see it, for sure.
I don't want to ruin anything, but so the process of doing the film to doing the voiceover, right? It's so completely different, but they're so completely amazing. So they actually bring the whole cast in. So if I'm doing an episode with James Arnold Taylor, all of the gang, right? They bring them all in, and then we just read down the line. So he will say his line, she's got her line, he's got his line, then it's my lines. Then we go back, boom, 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 boom. And then the next person, if he jumps in line, if he's got a smaller role. So you're basically just reading the story together and playing off each other's emotions and expressions through the voice.
Right.
But as you can see, I move a lot. So I didn't realize that when you go into a studio, you shouldn't wear like jewelry and scratchy clothes and things that are gonna make extra sound, because I move a lot. So they basically had to make me like I was in a straitjacket. I couldn't move, but I had to just force all the voice in order to bring this character to life. And for me, that was very hard. I like to use my expressions to take you on the journey with me.
Right, yeah.
What about The Mandalorian?
Oh, that's gonna be good. I heard someone stole some stuff off of the set. It's been happening for years.
Any thoughts on the upcoming series?
I think it's gonna be very good. It's gonna give light to, you know, a race that hasn't really been exploited until now. I mean, the Clone Wars, they started going there with it. But now we're going to get a TV show all dedicated to men that are under the armor. You know, all the fan groups are wonderful. 501st, they've had amazing, you know, what is the word I'm trying to say? Like a lot of love from Lucasfilm. As you see, like the 501st is the biggest group. So when it comes to like doing like little fan projects or little side projects through Lucasfilm, it's always been 501st. And the Mandalorian Mercs, I was there when they first started with a guy called Tom. And you saw a little group that had just as much passion, but they loved the Mandalorian armor just as much as Star Wars itself. And that's when they grew the Mandalorian Mercs. And now, however many years, 15, 16 something years later, we now have the storyline, The Mandalorian. So you never know what, by being a fan, when you actually get picked up and listened to. It might take 20, 30 years, but you know, Star Wars eventually comes around and realizes that the fans actually are what has driven and made Star Wars. That's what Star Wars is all about. The passion and people who have dedicated their lives, their families, you know, their wealth to making authentic costumes that look just like the movie. I have one now that's a Boba Fett. And I mean, he stands on a mannequin. I haven't yet worn him to a convention. I put him on once in a while for photo shoots. But you don't realize the dedication it takes to not only care for them, wear them, transport them, you know.
Right.
The back piece breaks, you're like, oh no, I gotta get a new back piece, you know. Your little cod piece breaks, you know. There's all these little pieces that break that you just don't realize, you know, that you're like, they're like a boat. You're constantly adding to them, you know. It's a forever longing investment.
What it's become certainly transcends the films.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Very much. When you go to a Star Wars convention, you go to a Star Wars premiere, and you see the presence of all those people in costumes, you know that Star Wars is about to air, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So just one more question before we open up to the audience for a few minutes. Boba Fett is a character we barely see on screen in the films. He's in, you know, a few minutes in the originals. You had a small part in the prequels, but he has such a huge following. Like, what is it about the character you think that drives people or that brings people's attention to him? Like, what is it that inspires people about him?
You know, he was an amazing character. He wasn't even meant to be Boba Fett. He was actually meant to be something called the Super Trooper, which was eventually going to be all the Stormtroopers. But then when Gary Kurtz and George and all the gang at Lucasfilm went over these costumes and how long it's going to take and how expensive it would be to put everybody into a suit like that, they realized that they're going to have to scratch that idea. And then Gary Kurtz, I think, was the one who said, why don't we make him a standalone bounty hunter, along with Bosk, you know, and all the rest. So that's when he really came to life. And if you've seen all the images of how they try to recreate him in the white and then they went to the green, it's an amazing, amazing concept, right, to how he evolved to who he is today. But the way he's still been able to survive is the fact that there was all these background stories. And I think the military have taken on this character so much with pride because he does resemble someone with a stature of a militant, right? Then the helmet gave such a mystique to him that you didn't know if he was an alien, a human, what race he was. At one point he was a human. Now we rewrote the books, he's a clone, you know, like I get all that. But I truly believe it was the fans that kept writing background stories that allowed this character to continue living beyond the Sarlacc pit, before there was the Sarlacc pit, you know, and or the belief that was the end with the Sarlacc pit. Yeah. So that's what George, I believe, started giving love and credit to this one small little character. You know what I mean? He didn't have to put Boba Fett. He could have chose any other one of the characters to put in, but he chose that character himself. And then coming out, they were like, oh, that's our Boba Fett. And it's this long-haired, curly-looking girl boy thing, you know? It's like, hi, Dad, Tom Wee's here. You know, it's like, what is that? You know, you're like, hi, I'm Boba Fett. You want to talk to Django? 1 second. Django, Tom Wee's here. You know, like, all of 5 foot nothing.
Yeah, you had all the attitude, though. We believed it.
You know, people say to me, you're so kind, you're so happy and outgoing, like you were so like miserable on the film. I said, yeah, they just didn't feed me, you know? I said, I missed lunch one day and that was my angry face, you know? And George said, what's up with the kid? He said, well, you worked him too much, he missed lunch. He said, well, make him miss lunch for the rest of the time. just kept me hype up on sugar, you know? It's my very...
Okay,
Let's open this up to the audience.
Yeah, does anyone have a, yeah.
Daniel Logan, ladies and gentlemen.
So thank you for coming to my hometown first. Do you think there's a chance that we will see Boba Fett? Like, I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is, but there's a chance, possibly, that we could see Boba Fett?
You never know where Boba will show up in the galaxy again. I can't spoil it. You're gonna have to wait and see. He might have died. You never know. Like, there's been some time that we haven't been there. You know, the Star Wars galaxy has been moving on. There's been years. He could have died before the Sarlacc pit, and then they recloned him of a bit of himself.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Never thought of that.
Just create some new background stories. You never know, right? With Star Wars, there's always a possibility. I got these young legs.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
What was your next role after Star Wars?
You know, I took a little bit of a break. These conventions, they were amazing for me. I was so young at the time that I was seeing things from other actors and stuff like that as a little kid you were shocked by. And most kids get influenced to it, where I kind of got drawn away from it. Thanks to Star Wars, I still managed to have some sort of fame. I call it part-time fame. I go home and my wife makes me do all the dishes, the cleaning, and taking care of the kid. And then I come to a convention and then I'm Daniel Logan Boba Fett again, you know? So that's kind of why there was such a little period of no acting for me. But I was still acting in school. So every 3 times a week, I would travel an hour from Orange County, where I live, all the way to LA to train with the best of the best voiceover coaches, acting coaches, theater coaches. So I've actually honed a lot of my acting, but just because I wasn't producing it on film, I was getting a little embarrassed about myself. But I talked to my friend Christopher Lloyd. He played Doc from Back to the Future. He says, Daniel, listen, I never started my career until I was almost 32 years old, right? He said, but from the ages of 21 to 32, he told everybody he was an actor. He said, because I was doing acting classes. He's like, I was acting all day, every day in these classes, so I could go around the world telling people like, yeah, I'm an actor, you know, well, what have you been in? Nothing, but I'm doing classes. But I wanted to do more than classes. I just wanted to have that break, try to grow a little, mature a little, and then come back with even more feist and power. So I just finished a film with the Funko Pop and a video game company called Valve. They created a game called Dota 2. And Dota 2 is huge in Asia and most of the world. So we just did a movie about the video game in the Philippines and China because they have these humongous arenas and stuff like that out there. And, so that one was done with the Green Power Ranger, Jason David Franks. He was a part of it as well. So I'm just starting to get back into it to show that I haven't just given up on it. But yeah, I did take a little bit of a quiet patch. Sometimes, you know, I tell my family and friends, they say, you know, I think it was good for you. And I said, well, I don't think sometimes I should have just continued in the race. It's like a marathon. If you're first in the marathon and you're sitting there and you're ahead of all the rest of the kids in your age group or whatever, and then you decide one day I'm just gonna take a seat on this bench. Well, at that point, not only did the gap get smaller, but the people started catching up, and then the people started getting better and younger. So as you're sitting there watching these people thinking, oh, I'm still in the race, they're running by and they're doing well, you end up trying to jump back in the race. Well, now you got a whole lot longer to get ahead now than when you should have just continued in it when you were at the top. But don't worry, there's a lot more to come, trust me.
You have a question right here, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead.
First off, I'd like to say it's an honor. And my question is, well, who is your favorite actor to work with on set?
Good question.
Yeah, I love them all. I love them all. Like,
Well, Ewan seemed pretty funny.
Ewan and Tim Morrison were my 2 favorite that I hung out with most of the time. But I have a great Christopher Lloyd story. Not Christopher Lloyd, Christopher Lee story. I had no clue who Christopher Lee was. Remember, we had 3 TV channels, 11:45, Bird came in and shut off the TV, said goodnight to all of us, right? Had no clue who this old man was. My Nana was more like my mother. Anything that she wanted, I would do. She said jump, I just said how high, right? So she starts shaking me. Son, do you know who that is? And I'm like, Oh, some very tall old man. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. You know, as a little 13-year-old clone. And she's like, that is Christopher Lee. You have to go take me to meet him. I've loved him all my life. And I'm like, So here she is fangirling out. I haven't even met the guy myself, let alone had a word with him. So I'm like, all right, come on, take her on over. I'm like, hello, sir, how are you doing? This is my nan. She's fangirling now, like, oh. So he turns back to me and he says, hey, you're doing a great job. I said, thank you, sir. He says, is this your first film? I said, yeah, this is my very first big film, yeah. Is this your first film? Meanwhile, remember this. This was my only big film this year. It took a lot of the year just to film this one movie, right? So I think in my mind as a 13-year-old little boy, hey, you film one movie a year. So he says, my boy, I have done over 150 films. So as a kid who never thought about what he said, I replied, oh my God, you must be old. 150 years old, to be correct, right? So, huge ass man. I mean, huge. I won't forget this. We were in the studio. He like stares down at me like, what? Meanwhile, I'm ruining my Nana's meet and greet with her favorite fan. You know, I'm like, oh, sorry. Talk about, you know, a bad interaction. So I said, 50? 51? And he just goes from to, my boy, you have just made my day. I was like, all right. I was like, okay, Nana, come on, let's go before I say anything else stupid.
Cut and run.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? I go over here.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm wonderful.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
In addition to playing Boba Fett, you also played a room full of young clones. How was it like filming that scene? Did they have to like, move you from chair to chair and different facial expressions?
Most people don't realize, but you got it 100%. So people are like, hey, so what was it like to be CGI'd and then just put all over the place? I said, no, that took 2 14-hour days. And I believe at my age, that was child labor. I mean, no, I was happy to work for you, Mr. Lucas. No, but that took 2 14-hour days, right? They had me sit here. Then, like, I couldn't just go down the line and sit like this. I was sitting here. Then I had to jump down 2 levels, but there was no mats or rugs. So I was literally having to lift myself up and scoot myself over to the next platform without touching the boots on the green screen, or else I've just ruined that whole entire spot. And if they try green screen over it, it's gonna have a bit of black in it where they won't be able to do it. So I was literally having to do this just to be able to get to sit. I'd be like here. Oh, like this. Right? And the opposite, it's like, well then I had to go down. So I'm like, like gymnastic at its finest. People said, you were a very strong looking little kid. I said, well, Star Wars was my very first workout. When I wasn't having to jump over different green screens in order to like not touch it with my feet, I was having to lift Jango Fett out of his very, very comfortable lazy boy chair. So that's another story. I think you got one more story, time for one more, right? So Jango Fett, when I walked on the set, we all seen in the movies, you got your star with your name and on your room. And you're like, celebrity! You know, you're thinking, I made it to the stars. So I walk in, bust open the door, my name on my door, open it, and I got like a couch like this, like a 2-seater. I got a very big table, and I got a clothes rack with a bathroom. Sit on my couch. I've made the big time, you know? So then when Jango Fett gets to set, he tells me to meet him over in his room. So I go over to his room. He has 2 rooms. I guess my agent didn't negotiate as well as his agent did. And he had all of the latest Lazy Boy couches. I mean, the whole entire living room set. He had a fridge that was nonstop. I mean, it just, you drink, it gets replaced. somehow the force was strong in his room. He had a big screen TV, and he had a secondary room, which was like his bedroom, which he could relax, sleep, and if you want to take a rest. This is when I realized I got the short end of the stick. So I was like, hey, look, instead of complaining, which I wasn't allowed to do anyway, because my mother would have beaten me, I just figured, why don't I just use Tim for his amenities, his beautiful, lazy boy couches, and his unlimited sodas, and his TV that he could watch anytime he likes. So I thought that I was getting one up on him. I didn't realize that every time he got back to his set, that armor was so heavy that he wasn't able to pull himself out, or he would have to kind of like, but it was just so heavy because they had actually made it out of steel on the newest one. So I was the one who had to always pull him out of the couch. So once he got all comfortable, I'd pull him up like, and then like, you know, the little bulldogs from Disney or Looney Tunes or whatever, you know, they walk together. Hi, Dad, yeah, let's go save the galaxy. So then we'd walk to set together. Well, after like 2 months of doing this, I realized that like, I still was getting the shorter end of the stick, right? Like the sodas weren't equaling out to me having to help this big man come out of his chair every single day. So I got caught on the set because sometimes you do eye lines. So it's really polite of you to come in when you're on break and stand behind the camera so that they can have like a real person eye line, like you to do it. Most actors have secondary people that will come in and stand for you. But for me, I wasn't doing anything. So I was like, hey, if you need me, you just call me. I'll be over in my one couch room, okay? Or in Tim's really nice one. So they came and got me. And I knew at this point Tim was stuffed because he had no one to pull him out of the couch. So we have all these speakers like back in school. You remember in school, like, Daniel Logan, please come to the principal's office. Daniel Logan, please come to the principal's office. You remember the little square boxes? Yep. We had them in the studio. So he could hear his name being called for like 20 minutes. Like, they asked me where he was. I said, I have no clue. Well, he could have been anywhere, right? Just like me, I'm not sitting there all day. I could be over there. So I was kind of honest. I said, I don't know. So they went and they checked his bedroom because there was 2 doors, 2 entries. He wasn't there. It was black. You know, looked like no one was there. No one was home. So they were like, he's not in his room. So meanwhile, he can hear on the loudspeaker, Django Fett to Studio 2, Django. And he's like, oh no. You know, he's trying to get up. He's trying to move all the different parts. He can't bend his knees, so, you know. So eventually, after 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, you know what? I think I might know where he is. They're like, where is he? I'm like, well, he might be in the couch in his room. And they're like, no, we checked. I said, no, check the other room. So there they go and they check, and he's like sitting there going, oh, I'm gonna kill that boy, where is he, you know? So he gets a set. It was a raining scene, he gets a set, and like, you can see in the documentary, he's sitting next to me, he's like, whoa, where were you, boy? You know, he's like, kind of like giving father and son like talk, you know? I'm like, oh, I had no clue you were still there, you know?
No wonder you guys had such a good rapport.
Oh, we really do, We still do to today. I mean,
that's really cool that you guys still keep in touch and you're still friends.
I go to New Zealand, I'm like, hey, I just landed. He's like, when are you coming to visit? I said, I'll come tomorrow. Next day, he's like, all right, I'm putting on a pot. Meaning, like, in New Zealand, we have these big pots that you just shove, like, big pieces of, like, beef on the bone. And then we have watercress and, like, we call kumara, but it's like a sweet potato kind of thing. It's like a New Zealand feast. I take, like, 10 of my family members down there, and this pot feeds us all. And he's just happy for us all to come.
You're making me hungry.
Oh, trust me, I always get hungry as soon as I land in New Zealand. I gain.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Any more questions? Sorry, I'll just keep talking. So I train with Ray Park also. He's like a brother to me. He's been on my case lately to get back to his gym. He says, you're starting to look more like Boba Fett. So, you know, I think there might be still an option for Jabba the Hutt's tail, you know? I'm a little guy, I can move the tail around somewhere in there, you know, why not? But I'll be getting back into shape, don't you worry. I've been comfortable for too long. Secrets don't make friends, guys. No.
So you mentioned your custom-made Boba Fett suit. How did you get that, how did you arrange to have that made?
Yeah, tell us about the armor, man.
So, the wonderful Mandalorian mercs, they had commissioned me a helmet after giving everybody else in the Star Wars galaxy a helmet before me. So when they gave it, they said that the paint was like wrong or didn't set right or something like that. So my helmet started looking like someone had smothered like toothpaste all over it. But like a Honda Civic, if that's all you got, you're gonna wax shine and you're gonna like love that Honda Civic, right? So I would take this helmet everywhere I would go, you know, like photo ops, on my table, like, and I was very proud of my helmet. I still am, you know, it's in my collection. It was my very first one. So it's got its place in my heart. Well, this guy, Nino, who's Wasted Fed on Instagram, he was a little drunk at Celebration, and I was sitting there talking with my father, Django Fett. And he comes up, he's like, hey, bros, man, like, I'd love to make you guys a helmet, rah, rah, rah. He's like, Daniel, bro. He's like, love your helmet, but, bro, I took a photo up with you today, and it's like, how do fans like me have a better helmet than you do? And I'm like, that's it, sober. I'm thinking, that's actually a really good point. So I start looking down at my Boba Fett helmet, I'm like, well, okay, cool. He's like, I would be honored to make you one. So I'm like, sure, well, while you're at it, make me the whole armor. And he's like, done. So you know, when you talk to someone who's drinking, you don't really think they're serious, right? So then I started getting these calls, and like, I had to get sized by a lady called Arcady. And yeah, my suit came in, and about 10 people put their hard efforts, painting, molding, doing the leather work, doing the servos so that my scope comes down and up, it blinks and flashes. Just so many people put so much into it that it's just so beautiful, and I love it.
Did you bring it?
I didn't bring it, no. It needs someone else to put me into it. You know, it's one of those armors that you're like, if you were a real bounty hunter, you couldn't really wear this because someone needs to put on the back strap and help you out.
It's like you need a squire.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I couldn't imagine trying to come through the border with that. And then they asked
that would be another thing coming across the border. Well, do you have anything? Well, I have a suit of armor, so yeah, it might have been.
Do you have any goods to clear? Well, I've got my Boba Fett armor.
What do you think about some of these guys, these cosplayers, the Mandalorian armor we have around?
I love them. I love each and every single one of them.
Some of the work that goes in is incredible, eh?
The thing before the Power Rangers came into the world, it was the Star Wars, you know? Now, the Power Rangers have competed, and I think they are almost on par with how many Power Rangers you... Huh? See? I was just saying that. How many you see at a con? Where, with the Star Wars, they were the original people who would... Well, Star Trek and Star Wars. You know what I mean? And it was so refreshing to walk in and see your people and be like, yes, we're here, you know?
Yeah.
The presence. It's like if we're in prison, our gang is showing higher presence in the Force. We're going backwards again. See? That was a look from George, like, who have I hired?
You have any questions, Chris? How many cons do you...
Oh, sorry.
No, absolutely. Go ahead, buddy.
What's my thoughts on Star Trek? I did. Sometimes you get desperate. Nah, jokes. It was a wonderful experience. My friend, he does, Vic Mignogna, he does the Star Trek Continues. And the guy who was their navigator, he was sick or something happened to him. So he calls me, he's like, dude, you're like his right size. Would you mind coming and be in this episode of Star Trek Continues? And I'm like, sure, why not? But I got to meet Grant Imahara. And through my acting, I've learned so much. And as an actor to an actor, it's like, I see like when girls talk, right? It's not the same as when guys get together. Like girls get together and like, you know? Whereas guys are like, oh yeah, whack, laid back, whatever. So I forgot my story. See what happens?
He was asking you your thoughts on Star Trek.
So I end up doing it. I get on set. Grant's sitting there, and he's like looking at every single button as he's like pushing them, right? But as someone who's been working on that Enterprise all your life pretty much, you know these buttons like as if they're like the stick in your car or like your mirror, right? You don't need to sit there and go, park the drive. You already know where drive is by so many clicks of driving that car over so many years, you know what I mean? Like, so I said to him as an actor to actor, like, hey, wouldn't it be more powerful if you sat there and you still gave the expression, but you were pushing your buttons at the same time as, you know, doing the thing? And he's like, man, I really appreciate that. He goes, I've been looking down, putting this, head to the camera the whole time, been realizing, you know what? All it took was one little bit of advice. You don't need to look down. It's like a pilot. You don't see them like, all right, check. They're like, okay, cross check, man. Okay, release. I've flown so much, you sit there and watch them, you're like, ADHD as a grown man, it sucks, but it's great.
Yeah, that extra layer of detail to a performance, it goes a long way.
But so then I get on the set, right? And the guy's shorter than me. So I was never able to stand up, and I wanted to walk around the bridge, but my pants looked like this. No lies. So I sat under the table the whole time and was like, cheap Star Trek. Glad I worked on Star Wars.
How many Comic-Cons do you make it to every year?
Man,
Can you keep track?
sometimes you can't keep track. I ended up reading off my passport. One year I went to 15 countries.
Oh, wow.
15 countries. And as a kid, I didn't have the capabilities of really seeing the world, being from the fact I was from New Zealand, and that, my livelihood was just living day to day, like surviving till the next day. And never thinking about being able to see a world out there with millions of fans of Star Wars, the cultures and different ethnics. It's beautiful. This year I had a son. He's 8 months old. But I had already said yes to a lot of conventions. So I had to fulfill them. But next year I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, not complete like a Jeremy break. I'm just slow down on as many, because I want to be there through the crawling and the talking and all that stage.
Yeah, you gotta get him a suit of armor soon.
I think I'm gonna get him in like a little Boba Fett outfit, and then I'll wear like the Jango Fett, and we'll walk around conventions together and be like, "Can I take pictures of you guys? Wow, you actually look like Daniel Logan." I'll just sit underneath my helmet like. So I've actually commissioned 2 more suits. Can't really. They're special. Special suits. One. So yeah, I got 2 more armors coming.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a whole office full of Star Wars Boba Fett stuff. I mean, the only person who's got a bigger Daniel Logan collection than me is that guy sitting there with the yellow shirt, Colin. Anything is Daniel Logan. He's like, "You'd never guess what came in the mail the other day." I'm like, "What'd you buy now, Colin?" "Well, I bought your Celebration poster that sat behind you in 2017. I'm like, "Colin, stop buying stuff." It's like, you got the real prop here. You don't need to buy it anymore. You got the guy, the action figure. He talks, he moves, you can poke me,
Well, speaking for our podcast, and I think most of the fans here, we'd love to see you back in that role. I don't know how you could have, I don't know how you could have a Boba Fett without using you as Boba Fett, man. And I hope to see you back on the screen.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
No, it's been a blessing to be a part of Star Wars, and the character Boba Fett has definitely been, besides my son, the highlight of my life. So,
Right.
And my wife, sorry, I gotta add that. Sorry, I always forget her. I sit there and I'm like, "You're the love of my life." My wife's like, I'm like, "Oh yeah, you too, but you are just so beautiful,"
Well, you know what, man? On behalf of all these fans and Comic-Con in London, my podcasting partner Chris here, thank you for coming out, man. It's been a great to interview you.
Thank you guys, really. Thank you for your guys' questions. Beautiful answers, a beautiful question, man. I hope I gave good answers. Yeah. But thank you, every single one of you guys sitting there and listening, for coming here. Because you can't all get to like Toronto or all the other Comic-Cons. But it's nice when people put on a con in such a close proximity to your hometown, or even in your hometown, to where you can enjoy them too, right? And that's why I love coming to these things. And if it wasn't for people continuously keep coming, they get bigger and bigger each year, Comic-Cons would have been gone a long time ago. So thank you guys very, very much. I really appreciate you all. Have a wonderful con. May the Dark Force be with you all. I'm stealing that from Ray.
Thank you for watching the Convention Junkies coverage of the 2018